Good to see yous. Oops. Get this properly in place for the audio and the spitter. Good to see everyone here. And we've got the fortnightly Eurasian one. Always first. G'day, Daniel, as well. And Bowerbird, good to see you, mate. God, it's slow, isn't it? Amount of people coming on. Didn't anybody get notifications? Yeah, basically just nice steak. I sort of normally, because yesterday we had these big steaks and they were just basically not... part of it was blue, part of it, so completely undercooked. But it was very soft, even though the inside was very... this one wasn't as thick, and so I ended up trying to get it to become a bit softer, and then I sort of overcooked it and sort of went from being a rare to a sort of a... it wasn't exactly medium rare, but it was just a bit further back. It wasn't exactly rare the way I like it. These steaks that I had, they weren't as thick. When you've got a really thick steak and you press onto it, you put a weight, a counterweight to press onto it. What it does is it cooks in, it forces the temperature in to cook in, and you do it. Then you flip it over a couple of minutes after, 3 minutes after, and you do it the other way. But because there's a lot of moisture, water content in a steak, what happens is it starts steaming inside. And that's what you want, that steaming effect. So it's still a rare steak or a blue steak or whatever, but that steaming effect then actually makes it softer. So yes, it's but you need a thicker steak to sort of do that. And the steaks that I had just weren't as thick, because the other ones were that thick. This one's was just sort of from there. That one was there. That's my normal steak, but that was, it's just the thickness just wasn't there to basically do that. So, shit happens, as they say. Yes. Nothing like a good steak. G'day, Richard. And g'day, Alex. Good to see you, mate. And Dominique, good to see you as well, mate. Got a few fans there, mate. T1 and T2. Be nice to Dominique. Yeah, well, we had Bart on earlier, but I think him and Pim they did go out to lunch, and hopefully there's a few extracurricular activities after that is entertaining them tonight. So yes, good for them. Okay, any questions, guys? Anything or any gossip within the carnivore community that you guys are sort of or things, controversies like the witch from Chorley? Yeah, they're starting to pile in. We started with 2 or 3 on the. I mean 3. Yeah, now that I'm starting, I do want to stick to a regular fortnightly one for the Eurasia, so people get used to it. That everybody knows the morning one, but the Eurasia, and I wish I could actually do a Eurasia every week. So a morning and then afternoon. But I just don't get enough hours. You only get 20 hours a month on StreamYard, so it's that limitation. Really? Oh, shit. It's strange. Have you gone to one of the IGA stores? Because IGA stores have liver. They actually have a better quality liver as well. So should check them out. Good. G'day, mate. How's it going? So, yeah. Your thoughts on infrared sauna versus Finnish sauna, any health implications? When it comes to infrared saunas, yeah, the only issue is whether you've got, some of them have designed in such a way where you don't have the high EMFs and electromagnetic fields, so they're actually shielded properly. And the problem is, unless you know the brand, it can be an issue. Now, infrared saunas are more to do with the red light sort of therapy and stuff like that. I'm in two camps about it. On the one hand, it can have benefits for some people, but in some other cases, it can be deleterious. I'll give you an example. If you've got severe mitochondrial dysfunction, and most people in the older age tend to have mitochondrial dysfunction, using sort of infrared saunas and actually putting those sort of wavelengths, which is a very narrow type of wavelength, because normally in the evening as the sun's going down, you are getting near infrared wavelengths, but you're also getting a number of the other wavelengths. And at the same time, you're also getting the sort of magnetosphere actually is slightly altered and affected. So the negative ion sort of flow is slightly different. And so the relationship between the two can have a different effect on the body compared to daylight or daytime and stuff like that. So I definitely wouldn't do it in the daytime, because that's a time, because you're basically moving between darkness and light. And when you move between darkness and light, you're really moving from a cortisol state to a melatonin state. That's really what you're doing. That is your cycle, a melatonin cycle. You're either moving into a melatonin cycle or you're moving into a cortisol cycle early in the morning. And later in the afternoon, you're moving into a melatonin cycle. And so it's best to have it in later afternoon in combination rather than or very early in the daytime. Very early we're talking about. I tend to steer towards the evenings and the later part of the day than in the early mornings, just because it's like the other thing. You don't want high melatonin early in the morning, because it really affects the level of cortisol. And it affects a whole lot of other sort of biological processes that get initiated with the early light and with the early cortisol spike. It sort of initiates a cascade of a whole lot of processes, a whole lot of transcription factors start happening, a whole lot of enzymes are starting to be produced so they can deal with a whole lot of nutrients that are going to come in. A lot of things start happening, and it's a completely different state of affairs. And that's why and also, I usually say to people, and people find it very strange, I usually say through the daytime, in a normal state of physiology, you have less stresses, and in the evening, you've got more oxidation. Why? Because basically the body's repairing. And so it's, increasing slightly inflammation, stuff like that. So, and cortisol actually suppresses it. That's why as cortisol goes down and night comes in, you basically, if you've got a cold or a cough or that, it gets worse in the evenings. So it exacerbates any inflammatory sort of state in the evening. And that's a sort of this sort of cycle. So specific times of the day, yes. Is it shielded properly? That's another issue. the fetish on a sauna is basically the sort of, this sort of going from, which is basically cold thermogenesis, or, going from cold to hot, and all that is a hormetic effect. So you're basically inducing a sort of a stress, a short-term stress, to push up certain pathways, repair mechanisms and pathways, glutathione, and a whole lot of other sort of repair mechanisms. So it's got a different utility, and usually it's combined with heat and cold in many cases to get the best effect from what I call a fetish sauna. So it's got its place, and the sort of the infrared sauna has also its place, but shouldn't be overused and shouldn't be over abused, because there can be some deleterious, especially in some groups. Especially the people that've got mitochondrial issues first need to fix up their mitochondrial issues before starting to use sort of light therapy, because they can actually exacerbate the problem. It's like if you've got damaged mitochondria, or the electron chains are really busted in many cases, trying to put more energy into the system can make things worse. So it depends on the circumstances in that regard. Hope that sort of covered, didn't confuse. If there's any confusing part of what I said, just ask me again, specific to what you didn't understand. I suspect that's the liver and kidney option. Yes. What? You're kidding me? Not even in IGA stores? Fucking hell. What the hell's going on? That seems strange. Yeah. Go to a butcher. If you go to a local butcher, like there's a local butcher that I go to sometimes, and I've got their card. I'll call them and actually say, "Can you hold on to certain items, like certain organ meats and whatever? Put them aside. I'll pick them up, and such and such a time." So that's another way, because they will have time when they get stuff in and all that. They'll probably be slaughtering stuff, and they will be taking out the organs and doing all this sort of stuff. So basically, consider that as well, as an option. Yeah, they may be expensive, but when it comes to organ meats, they're pretty cheap, because it's stuff that they dispose. Not many people really ask for them or want them. So, fat trimmings as well, they'll sell for next to nothing, a couple of bucks for a bag full of fat trimmings. So, you're really just paying for the hassle for them to cut it all up for you and throw it in the bag. That's what you're paying the couple of bucks, because otherwise it just goes into the bin. So keep that in mind. I like the Finnish sauna more. Yes, it's nothing like some warmth, and then that. Yeah, I have to say, I think infrared has its place, but it's a bit overrated. If you've got good nutrition, you've got good other things. How many stresses, and I've known people that basically have tried to use that and actually have got worse. Try and get the sort of the light stuff and all that from nature, rather than try and artificially create these sort of spectrums. I sort of find that they never do it properly. So yeah, I've got some, let's say, question marks on the infrared stuff, how good it is. I'm not convinced at this point anyway. Yeah, more about the kidneys and liver and all that I can notice. Oops. Lamb or beef? I go for lamb. I've just grown up on lamb and goat liver. So look, I think it's also a bit of a preference. I prefer, it's sort of, I think it's a preference. I won't say anything more than that, because you could argue for ages about, which is best and all that. I think at the end of the day, it's a preference. They have slightly different profiles in certain micronutrients, but it's not substantial. It's not massive or anything like that. So I wouldn't get too sort of wound up about the whole thing. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Some people swear by beef livers as best, so yeah, there you go. But harder to get, so it's one of those things, preference. A lot of some of my Asian friends, they prefer basically like giblets, like chicken giblets and all that, which is all the different organs and all that. So yeah, and beef liver taste is stronger. Yeah, it is. And that's probably why I prefer lamb's liver. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's sort of a personal sort of preference. We know you're fussy. Whatever you, bird seed. Do not touch the bird seed. Be a good T2. Anyway, any more questions, guys? Any gossip? Have you heard things? I mean, I don't get a chance because I haven't looked at hardly anything within the carnivore community or vegan community or anything this week. Nothing. I've been looking at archaeological stuff, and I've been looking at some sciencey stuff and some physics and some other shows that I've sort of neglected. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't looked at. And is there anything that you guys are sort of hearing out there? Harry, I've tried to cook giblets your style, but had to eat them all myself, and my family refused. Okay, yeah. Look, they can be a bit chewy. There's an easy way of actually doing it, is mincing them, and then combining them with sort of. I'll tell you why it's easy to mince them. Compared to getting large livers and after cutting them up and then mince them and all that, it's much quicker. You put them in a mincer, you mince the whole lot, and then you throw them in with minced meat, mix it all up, and actually you've got patties. Very quick in that regard. So they're not too bad, and also they are, they don't have excessive amounts. You could actually have you could have these sort of like giblet type livers and organ meats and all that. You could have them every day practically, because they're not excessive in a lot of the micronutrients. They've got a good profile, but not excessive. And so, they can be used as a sort of like a daily supplement, a multivitamin, but a natural multivitamin that incorporates really well and is highly bioavailable. So, that's how I would see it in one regard. Yeah, look, it can help if you've got access to a massive market and all that. Yeah, it does make a difference. I know from some of the actual, like the seafood markets on the mainland, like in Melbourne and Sydney, they are massive. I've been to them, and they are massive compared to our waterfront down here. You go down, you go, oh, do you have this? They go, oh, we don't have any. Maybe next week. Give me a call, and you're always going back. You go to one of those markets, there's everything, any sort of seafood you can think of. So, and the same thing with different meats. The only issue that I've got with larger is that some of them are okay, but some of them can be an issue in with their sourcing information, I find, in the bigger ones. So where with the local ones, you can just talk to the local person and they will tell you, oh yeah, we got it from that place or that. And you usually know the areas, and that's sort of local produce, sort of, you can get better information. So, that's sort of the way I sort of approached in that regard. We make cut a bush in my region from boiled liver and put it in cold. Okay. So interesting. So, I mean, look, people make it in a whole lot of. I know my father used to make a lot of like organ meats, like boil them and sort of and make sort of soups and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways people can make them. You can combine dairy products like cream and and butter in them and stuff like that, and really give them that sort of creamy sort of taste. So there's a lot of ways of doing stuff. Experiment, guys. You'll be surprised with the sort of results you'll end up. Sometimes, just playing around doing things, you can potentially make something new that you really the family will like in that regard. And that's the other thing. You're always struggling, especially if you've got younger kids and stuff like that. If you can get them young enough, like Tristan, that has had his kids from a very young age eating these sort of foods, they're sort of used to it. They're never going to have a problem, and it'll be a non-issue for them in the future. It's much harder when you've got teenage kids. That's when it becomes a bit of a hassle for a lot of family people. So yeah, it's you sort of have to sort of mask it to get the nutrition in. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. So mincing sort of works for you and all that. Yeah, beef hearts and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, being a muscle, it's more closer to muscle meat. So and it's very high in coenzyme Q10 and a whole lot of other nutrients. So it's really good to combine it in with other meats and other stuff and create different mince stuff. But also sausages. That's another option, to combine organ meats with muscle meats and create a number of different sausages, which, with a bit of spice, with spices in and stuff like that, which gives them a better flavor. Barbecue them, perfect. You can get really good nutrition that way into a lot of family members. Look, I usually get stuff that I don't have a problem with nitrates. At the end of the day, nitrates, whether they come from plants, like green plants have more nitrates than a lot of these meats. So it's not a big issue. And all those experiments are all on rats. They were massive doses, and the rats were deliberately given a cancerous agent. So was it the agent? Were they did they have insufficient nutrition? It's just nonsense. I'd just ignore that. It's been pretty much debunked in that regard. But and it does create nitric oxide synthesis. My issue isn't so much the nitrate salts, but I find that most of the stuff that actually has nitrate salts, they put other things in there, a whole lot of other fillers. They will put sugar in there. They will put flour in there. They will put all these other things. And I find that most of the products that tend to have the nitrates usually have all these other shit, which basically just makes it really an inferior product. So it's not the nitrates, but usually I give them a miss and go for sort of traditional cured meats, which I know is only salt-based cured meats or smoked. And that's the sort of stuff I get. And that stuff I can rely on, that it's going to be done in a more traditional way, and it's not going to have any of the other fillers. Problem is, industry, when the fillers are below a certain threshold, they don't necessarily always have to put on the label. And that's the problem. You don't know what you're getting. So I just give them a miss altogether, not due to the nitrates, but due to potentially the other stuff that is probably in there because they're not done in that more traditional way. So that's how I sort of approach it. But, occasionally having a sausage with some of the nitrates in is not going to kill you. That's just nonsense. So I wouldn't be really too worried having the occasional, product here or there. Just don't make it a regular thing, because there's going to be other stuff in there which is probably going to be deleterious far more than nitrates. So if you really want to up your nitrates, eat a whole lot of greens. They got far more in quantity for 100 grams. And hi Harry. Could not find any info how to do carb cycling on a ketogenic diet. I was wondering if you could give me any advice. Is there a reason why you need to do carb cycling? Basically, the way I sort of cycle out of ketosis, I'm always in a low-grade ketosis anyway. I just have more dairy products, which have got carbohydrates. They're lower in deuterium, and so compared to glucose and compared to fructose and stuff like that. So I would rather get sugar from dairy in the form of galactose, which does not turn into fructose. It's not fructose. Galactose is galactose. It goes through a 4-enzymatic pathway, turns into glucose. So you've got glucose, half glucose. So lactose, the milk lactose, that part of the sugar part is basically half glucose, half galactose. And galactose, there are 4-enzymatic pathways that will convert it. So you basically end up with just glucose, and glucose is less glycating than fructose. So I wouldn't touch any fructose-related products. And most of the other carb-related products are basically high in either oxalates or high in other anti-nutrients. So why bother? If you really want to get some sort of carbohydrate in you, just get more dairy if you can tolerate it. I've got issues with things like, for medicinal purposes, if you want to use honey, like Manuka honey and stuff like that, fine, but I wouldn't use it as a food. I don't believe in going deep into ketosis, and I don't believe into sort of cycling. I think that it's much better to sort of be in this sort of low grade where you sort of have a low grade and you're fat adapted, and that's about it. And you don't even notice, when you're not eating, you're not hungry. That's when you're fat adapted, and you can swing at that low grade, which is a much better for your thyroid, a much better for everything that is functioning in your body. So that's the best approach to have it. It's a much healthier approach. It's more ancestral because it's closer to sort of ancestral. If you're going to cycle, if you really want to cycle, the best things to cycle with would be the sort of low glycemic sort of stuff like pumpkin, maybe a bit of sweet potato, a bit of carrot, a bit of something like zucchini. I just stick to those sort of things which have probably got the least anti-nutrients and least harmful on a ketogenic diet. So you would you'd increase the quantity of those sort of things to basically, if you want to basically push yourself slightly out of ketosis for a short amount of time. So that's how I would do it with those sort of foods. But I wouldn't chase ketones anyway. Ketones are unnecessary to chase. Your body does much better with long chain fatty acids, and it doesn't need a lot of ketones. It's not a necessary thing. The only time you want to put yourself in a ketotic state is if you want to lose weight. Fair enough. If you want to lose weight, yep. If you want, because at the end of the day, impeding keeping insulin low is a way of doing it. There are other biohacks you can do it. You can get an inhibitor of CD38 and you can suppress insulin that way because, there's a lot of different ways. I'll be talking about CD38 in the future and explaining how it's related to a lot of things, including cancer, sugar metabolism, and a lot of other things. I've talked about in the past about how it's related to NAD+, your energy production within your mitochondria, but I will get into explaining over time the sort of intricacies of CD38, or as it's called, cycle ADP ribose, cyclic ADP ribose, and also in regards to its signaling relationship to calcium signaling. It's involved in a lot of areas, in particular with insulin sort of response, but also with glycolysis. So it's I'm not going to go there today, but it's there are more biohacks that I'll be discussing in future videos and explaining them to deal with a lot of these sort of things. And some of them have relationships, because there are some people that basically find it very hard to get into a ketotic state because they just have too many issues with mitochondrial dysfunction, maybe things that they're consuming and stuff like that. So as we go along, I'll explain a lot of these sort of things in small bits to basically help people along. But I would not be chasing high ketosis, not healthy, and I wouldn't be chasing, occasionally. You can consume a bit more meat, and that will cycle you out. Eating a bit more meat will cycle you out of ketosis. So you don't really need the carbs. So that's why carnivore diet is much more, has this lower gradient of ketotic, sort of a low gradient ketotic state. And when you're eating more meat, you end up sort of pushing yourself out of that, which is a healthy thing. So you can be more anabolic, so you can build more tissue, muscle, which is good. But it's not too, the ratio between glucagon and insulin is 1.3. So it's quite low. So you're not going to be basically, in any way it won't be deleterious to you. Just pure glucose will give you a ratio of 4. So it's quite low. And the focus should be to basically be primarily on an animal-based diet and to literally cycle through low-grade ketosis when you're not eating to to basically back to beta oxidation, and because that's what you want. You need to basically train your body to use primarily long chain fats, as much as possible. So, and even that bullshit about the brain, you can go and see the thing that I did with Bart on the human brain and the energetics of that. It's on his site. So I've gone through a Russian study, and I'm not going to explain it tonight. You can go and check it there on Bart's channel, Bart K's channel, if you're not aware of his channel. And yes, and get a bit of an overview on that. So yeah, overrated. Most populations around the world do never put themselves in long-term ketosis anyway. It's not very healthy, and it also can affect depletion of deuterium and stuff like that. You need more long-chain fats to deplete deuterium properly. This is why populations like the Inuit have got that change in their genetics to basically be better depleters in an environment where they don't have UV radiation to do it. So that's the key driver. It's not this sort of bullshit that people talk about that ketosis is bad. No, it's basically that you need, it's much healthier to be in a state of lower grade ketosis, not chronically, because it's too catabolic. It's not good for your body long term. It's not good for your thyroid. It just generally isn't good for your health. So yes, and it's not as efficient in deuterium depletion either. So, but there are arguments on that point with people, and I'm not going to get into that, into those arguments. So there are issues about the type of fats that you release in your bloodstream as free fatty acids, the differentials of that, whether that is an issue with past stuff. So, and that's another issue. If you've come from a diet which has been high in seed oils, when you release a lot of those seed oils as free fatty acids, you'll be releasing a lot of deuterium as well. So So are you getting enough vitamin E to stabilize those and deal with that, with those, PUFAs coming out? It's very nuanced in that regard. So if your recent to the ketogenic diet, I would get on a jarrow palm oil based low dose vitamin E for the next 6 years at a minimum to deal with stored PUFA. So yeah, so keep that in mind as well. So it's, unless I know your circumstances, if you want a few tips, just send me an email. I can write you a quick 15-minute sort of tips, give you a bit of a background so I know what exactly your state is. So I can sort of customize something a bit better. Would organ meats work in a slow cooker? Bone broth? Yeah, probably. I've never really looked. Yeah, no idea. Anybody knows? I've never really done slow cooker sort of organ meats type thing. I've done regular meats and stuff like that, but not organ meats. So organ meats I usually do in a different way, either stir fried or barbecued, or in burgers, or just cooked on a hot plate and stuff like that. So yeah, I sort of vary it the way I do it, but never done it in a slow cooker bone broth combination. So can't tell you what it would taste like. Yeah, you may. Yeah, potentially you may react to nitrates. People there can be different sensitivities to nitrates, but there could be other things in there as well, other fillers. Is it the nitrates? Because some of these foods that are processed foods, they also not only put nitrates, but they'll put like flours and stuff like that. Maybe there's a bit of gluten in it. Unfortunately, that's the case with modern day processed food, unless you get it from a specific type. And usually if you're getting it from an artisan type product, it tends to not have any of this stuff anyway. So is it the nitrates, or is it some other filler that's in there that you're reacting to? So it's really hard to pin down in that regard. But yeah, I've heard that some people do react. The only studies we do have on reactivity are rat studies, and they don't really tell us much about how it actually works in humans, because there are other type of mammals which they've tried it, other smaller, what do they call I forget now. It's another sort of little animal like a mouse, but it doesn't actually show similar reactions. And that animal also doesn't produce, I can't remember, but doesn't produce vitamin C like we don't produce. Very similar, much better model than for a human than a rat, because rats even have a poor lipid metabolism. So their lipid metabolism is very different, and so they can't produce they can't convert a lot of L-arachidonic acid. So they tend to have far more accumulating in their system, and as a consequence can be more deleterious, whatever source it comes from. So there's a lot of problems with studies. So you got to be very careful that you don't jump on bandwagons in that regard. Yep. What do you think is the reduction in vitamins, enzymes from boiling, cooking in the oven of meat? It varies. If you basically for instance, when I cook something, I try to shear it from the outside, so I lose very little fluids from the inside, so I retain the fluids inside. So higher temperature to sear it on the outside as fast as possible, so you don't lose fluids. And then 3 minutes on a hot plate where it will actually cook a bit more on the hot plate. It's an old restaurant trick. They cook it quickly. They put it they've got a hot plate, and you can actually just heat up a plate by putting it under the tap, under hot water, and really heating it up, and then sticking that steak on there, and it will just cook a bit more as it rests. So this is how they do it in restaurants, but they actually put it in special ovens. But that's a trick that you can use in that regard. In terms of vitamins and minerals, you don't really lose much when it comes to meat. Actually, in some cases, certain vitamins and minerals actually go up when you cook the food, so rather than going down. So in its raw form, you get less than you get in its cooked form. So yeah, so it's not black and white in that regard. I think the biggest thing is fluid loss. I think the biggest thing you could actually probably lose from a steak, more than many other things, fat-soluble vitamins, it's not an issue. It's probably going to be more the water-soluble vitamins, and in particular potassium. That's the sort of thing. And that's why I sort of sear it, get a thicker steak, sear it on the outside, and put some counterweight on top to cook through, so you can actually create a steaming effect inside that will soften it, so you don't have to overcook it, and retain the moisture inside, and it becomes really nice and soft. And so that's how I do it anyway. So that's the sort of trick. But the exact percentages, depending on the heat, if it's depending on the length of time, the longer you cook something, the more you will lose. So that is why the trick there is to use high temperature to sear it on the outside and hold everything in, and basically use the high temperature, because you put a weight on top. The heat will come through in a stronger way and create this sort of a very, like a lot of steam inside the middle, softening it. And then you just take it off, put it on the plate, and you're done. So that's the best way. But if you overcook things for a very long time, if it's at a low temperature, like a slow cooker and all that, you're still going to lose. You will lose more that way than you will lose by high temperature, and locking in the juices and not overcooking it. Because even in a slow cooker, you will cook more inside than you would with a high temperature, sort of two sides, a couple of minutes. So yeah, but then again, it's still going to be quite soft in a slow cooker as well. You're not going to lose a lot. Probably the difference is it won't be 20-30%. It'll be something like 5 to 7, maybe a bit more. It's not going to be massive. So I wouldn't get too concerned. So like most things that are in an oven, slow cooker, stuff like that, you're probably going to lose less fluids. Boiling, you will lose more fluids actually just going into the water. And so the best way then is to not boil it in too much water, and then basically have it on a low temperature so it slowly reduces in volume. So you basically end up combining the water with the meat in a boiled form, in some sort of soupy type thing. And so you're still getting the nutrients that have sort of seeped out of the meat into the water. So I would say boiling, you would lose the biggest amount in boiling than anything else. So, but if you're making a soup, then you're still going to be drinking. It won't be in the meat, but it will be in the water. So you'll still get some of those minerals, potassium and stuff like that in particular. So yeah, just keep that in mind. T2, you'll throw anything into a slow cooker. So let that be a warning to you, T1. Don't turn up. They're having their own little conversation. Good to see. Hi, Christina. Good to see you. Is there a thing as protein cycling? Never heard of it. I think the only thing you could call protein cycling that tribal people would have had, let's put it this way. If you're a tribal person, you're not going to have, you don't have a supermarket. So occasionally there'll be food available around in your environment. Occasionally the pickings will be very little. So you are probably cycling, protein cycling, because you're into forced, calorie restriction or forced sort of fasting or intermittent fasting or whatever. So yeah, you could call that cycling in a sense. I can't think of anything else you could call. And also, there are times to basically be less anabolic and more anabolic and swing between those sort of stages. It's like being, that low grade ketosis or out of it, that sort of swinging between the two is a sort of a much healthier state to be. Your body still needs some level of growth, but also some level of catabolism. It needs to cycle through. And in a sense, cycling, I don't really use the word, I don't like using the word carb cycling or protein cycling or anything. I just prefer using the word like nutrient cycling. You're cycling using more nutrients or using less nutrients. You're upping autophagy or you're lowering autophagy. So it's more that, and that sort of pulsatile effect that I've always talked about. So I think that's a bit better, and it's more closer to the way we would have lived for millions of years, as hominins. So that's sort of my take on that anyway. Yeah, I wouldn't make stock with organ meat. Yeah, exactly. Better ways to make stock. Exactly. That bird brain will eat anything. I add a bit of so apple cider vinegar. Yeah, look, you can. It's one thing. Um, different people, other people use lemon juice, other people use apple cider vinegar, other people use like creams and sort of dairy products just to give it a more buttery taste. So there's a whole lot of different ways of doing things in that regard. So you can try different things. Yep, sounds good. I can't actually see any point in carb cycling. I do, however, just the fat to protein ratio depends on the intensity of my training. Yep, yeah, exactly. So if you're training more, you're probably breaking down muscle. You probably need more protein. There's a lot of things, and especially with women going through their sort of, if they're menstruating and they're going through that sort of cycle as well, they need to consider other things as well. Coming out of it, you may need a bit more in terms of protein. So in that regard, because it's sort of a rebuilding sort of phase. So, and the body sort of responds to it. But at the same time, if you add a bit more, you're supporting also the more, the sort of pathways that help with reproduction as well. So keep that in mind, that it does enhance that part as well. Milk cycling must be a thing. Yeah, fuck, you're right. I forgot to put them on. You're right. I don't have them on. They're over there. I better put them on. Thanks for reminding me. I'm really losing the plot. Better clean them. I forgot to put them on. I actually took them off earlier, and then in my rush to get to because I realised, I'm running late. So yeah, I forgot them. Good. Thanks for reminding me. I need to have a good sleep tonight. Yes, exactly. They usually at each other's you know, throats. I was going to say beak and foot. Sort of like a foot and mouth disease, those two. But today they'll be very civil. Don't know what's happening. Hi, Kitty. Good to see you. Well, you got a big fan club here with a lot of these characters here. I wouldn't wait for anything from that, but from that troll. Uh, yes, those two can be very cheesy. Had to throw that in. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fasting is really hard if you're not on a low carb type diet, whether it's keto. I actually have to say, when I was doing keto, I found it really easy to fast. Actually, even easier to fast than on carnivore. So yeah, that's definitely. I'd have to agree with you with that. Yeah, I know it's crazy. Yeah, notifications are just all over the place at the moment. Um, I've got people that basically are coming back to me that basically say, "Oh, I got unsubscribed from you." It's just, and they had to resubscribe. So it's just crazy. It's all over the place. Yes, YouTube and their bots. They're AI bots. Yes, they definitely don't like us. We are their nemesis. Yes, yes. Oops, I just overshot. Sorry about that. Damn, StreamYard. Sweet soda beer, which are worse than the other. I would say look. I tend to go for a cider, a low carb cider, than a beer nowadays. For the reason is that there's a lot of, because of the grains. There's more estrogenic type properties in beer. It's far more fattening in a sense. And a low carb soda, a low carb cider is less of a problem. When it comes to sweet soda and beer, in terms of, like, the sweet soda's probably got less anti-nutrients in it compared to a beer, but the beer has got less glycating factors. So they have different characteristics. One is bad because it glycates more. Like the sweet soda would have more fructose, would glycate more the insides of your body, so it's not very healthy for your body. The other one basically will give you a beer belly. Is more estrogenic, so it has other ramifications in that regard. So they're pretty much on balance, pretty much as bad as each other, I would have to say, in some regards. Yeah, probably soda is just slightly worse because of its effects on the liver. That's the only thing, so it probably is worse on the liver than the beer, because the beer, at the end of the day, it is glucose. So glucose isn't going to be toxic to the liver, but fructose is. So yes, so that's the only thing that I could say. Yeah. So I was, how would I actually, if I was given if I was told you could only have one or the two, I'd have the beer. And if I said I can only have one supplement, I would make sure it was boron to suppress the estrogenic effects of the beer. And that's how I would do it. So yes, T2, very right. It is worse, the fructose. So compared to the glucose, much worse. But yes, slow cooking preserves more nutrients compared to traditional cooking. Depends. There's sous vide, which is another method that holds a lot of nutrients in, that can actually be used as well, which is a sort of boiling method in a special plastic type holder. So that's one method. There's a lot of different methods. If you basically you shear the outside of a steak, like really make sure that you've sheared it on the outside and it doesn't have sufficient time to lose any nutrients, then that's just as good as slow cooking in a sense. But generally speaking, compared to overcooking something over a length of time, a slow cooker is just as pretty good as well. But we're talking about small percentages here, so I wouldn't get too concerned. If you prefer slow cooking your stuff, fine. Just remember, you will lose more enzymes that way. When you undercook something, and you will end up with, and it's a bit more raw inside, you will retain more of the enzymes. And as you get older, we need more enzymes because we produce less. Our enzymatic sort of production declines as our energy production declines. So, getting enzymes from foods is a good thing. So just keep that in mind. Have some foods that are a bit more on the raw side. Nothing like a bit of raw, I can tell you. Yeah, that's true. There's sweet soda. Well, they do. Well, there are sweet sodas that have got alcohol in them. There are brands that have. So you get both the alcohol and the sort of the fructose in there hitting your liver. Even better. Yes. Accelerating psoriasis. I do get some carbs from liver. Yeah, you will. Yeah. You'll get some carbs from eggs. You'll get a lot of carbs from dairy. And all sorts of products. You'll get some animal carbs. Yeah, not an issue. I mean, let's not get too wound up about things. But you did order some stuff from a place which better quality stuff, which is good. That's it. Guinea pigs. Thank you, Kitty. That is the little animal that I was thinking that is much better as a model to use to compare humans with guinea pigs rather than humans with rats. So it's a far better model. It's not perfect, no, and I wouldn't rely on guinea pig studies as the definitive studies for humans. Humans are humans. Things are there's still a lot of differences in terms of enzymatic pathways and all that, but a lot of things that are much closer to a guinea pig than to a rat. So I'll leave the others out there that love the rat studies, and they can enjoy those to their heart's content. But I will try to focus on human studies and keeping to a minimum animal studies to things like toxicity and other things which are more applicable to all eukaryotic cells and mammalian tissue. And I cook a lot of, yep, that's just more on food. Come off. Okay. Dominic's getting into the thing as well with more food. See if I can get into the question. I used to just sleep with my glasses and actually bust them. That's what I did. Yes. Or I'd go to a pub. I had some really Gant glasses, really. My sister bought them for me, 300 odd euros. And I fucking left them in a bar somewhere in Asia. This was in Bali at the time. And went back. Somebody just must have picked them up and gone. That was awful. Yes. So nowadays, I go for $50 glasses, sunnies, and if I lose them, I don't give a shit. And yeah, okay, yeah, they do. I mean, I had pet guinea pigs as a youngster. If people have issues with managing that, so there are. I don't have there's actual genes for that as well, and I've actually got really good genes at degrading histamine. So some people have poor genes in degrading histamine and do much better on foods that are more raw and foods that are less fermented and stuff like that. So yes, there can be issues like that between different people. So I always say to people, I've been saying it for ages, you know me, I've said to people that you need to basically get your genes tested. You need to check these things to find out and customize your diet much better and more closer to your ancestral roots, and you will be better for it. You can't eat like Harry, and you can't eat like Bart, and you can't eat like anyone. You need to basically look at your own ancestry, and if you don't have enough information about your ancestry because you come from a mixed family, a mixed heritage, I meant to say, then you should look at other options, and those other options are, getting a genetic test and finding out how to customize your own diet, in a number of ways. So that's what you need to do. Yes. And g'day, Mandy. Good to see you. Yeah, exactly. So, but there are genetic reasons for it as well. So, Ian, do you recall the animal nutria raised for a while for human consumption? No, I don't. Sorry, I just don't. Yeah, I can't answer that because I do not know enough about it. Should have drank this. That's my milk. That's my last meal for the night. 7 o'clock. I should have actually already drank that. I just haven't. Been a bit slow. Do I like anime? Nah, not really into it, to be honest. Look, I don't. No, look, I have watched some animation stuff on TV. Don't get me wrong, some Japanese stuff, and like the sort of, what is it called? Similar to some of their. Remember the Pacific Rim, the big creatures that come out of that sort of primordial pool from another galaxy or another dimension or whatever, come through to try and destroy everything, and those sort of that style. I have watched some of that sort of stuff. My nephews are really heavy into that, so yes, but I can't say I am. But I have watched some, and I do like a bit of animation, don't get me wrong. But I'm probably a bit more old-fashioned when it comes to animation. Not, I know what you're talking about, anime, which is more the Japanese or the Northeast Asian style. Yep, a bit of it, but I'm not heavily into it. But when it comes to animation in general, I'm more the old sort of Daffy Duck and that sort of stuff. Just Sylvester and stuff like that, just the funny stuff, just to tickle my tummy, so to speak, with just slapstick type comedy, So I've even basically looked at old Laurel and Hardy stuff that goes way back, which is really the sort of original slapstick comedy type things. So G'day, Gusto. Good to see you, mate. Nutrient looks like a rat. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, don't know enough. Sorry. To really, I'm not into all the exotic stuff. Sorry. G'day, mate. Good to see you. I'm not surprised. I am not surprised at all. What's wrong with traditional porn, T1? Fucking hell. Don't you like traditional porn? Real humans. Actual real humans. God almighty. He likes to be in the fantasy land, doesn't he? I bet you do. Not that I understand what it is, but it's probably something that I should be putting on screen. Probably going to get myself in trouble with YouTube. Yes, but I'm not surprised when it comes to T1. Yes, or T2. That may have been a Freudian slip. Well, guys, any questions? We've had the comedy interlude time. A little bit of milk. Way too creamy. Anyone? I'm sort of cycling back through. Question, please. Anything. There must be something that's happening in the carnivore world that I missed completely. Oops, still not coming through. Yeah, I know. No such thing, Kitty, as too creamy. I agree. Definitely not. Okay, tried 50 grams of niacin and got a flush next day. Tried 100 niacin with fatty duck leg, no flush. With what? Fatty duck leg? What's fatty duck leg? Is that what is fatty duck leg? I've heard this saying. Let me just take a look. Oh, you're talking about it as in duck, having duck at the same time. A fatty duck leg. Yeah. God, I'm losing it. Really? Oh. Well, there you go. Maybe that's what I need. A bit of leg. Yes. To avoid the flushes. Okay. I get bad reactions to raw meat. Yeah, look, some people can. It depends. Yeah, it depends on a lot of factors. Sometimes people can't break down maybe insufficient stomach acid because of not of enough mitochondrial capacity to break down and to deal with it. It can be a bit much harder on digestion. So it's one reason why we started cooking. Because remember, we were scavengers of raw meat initially, and when meat sort of putrefies a bit, it becomes softer. So that's the other thing. Did you look more into topofferals by any chance? Why would I need to look into topofferals? I gave you the answer last time in terms of topofferals this morning. So, there's a couple of different ones. There's, your delta, gamma, your topofferals have got different tail lengths. And I explained that those tails basically are used to basically as electron donors to stabilize fatty acids that basically get oxidized from just normal functioning of the body. And if you've got sufficient glutathione, you can recycle them as well, which is a good thing. So you don't need as much. So high doses of vitamin E or vitamin C should be avoided on a carnivore diet, period. No, you can create imbalances, you can create all sorts of reactivity. High E, high C is not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. Oxalate is created by one, and you create actually more, because when you've got too much E, you may be electron doning, but the thing is, if you don't have sufficient capacity to recycle, what happens is that E can become a pro-oxidant. So, don't listen to people out there that say, oh, take this supplement and all that. Most vitamin E is bound in the food. And if you're eating a species-appropriate diet, you will get sufficient vitamin E in its full complex. And you're not going to have any problems. And that will basically burrow itself into the membranes, and those tails of different lengths will basically do their antioxidant activity, which is what they're designed to do. It's simple as that. It's not a complicated thing. T2, it's not complicated at all. I mean, I've looked at the other stuff that other guy actually talked about. I think I can't remember who actually asked me. It was a while back. And I'm not that convinced that we need so much vitamin E. It's not natural. The quantities that, the quantities that we get normally in our diet have been much lower historically. So I'm not convinced, Sorry. Did you try? My throat's becoming really, and even this isn't helping. Too much talking today, too many hours. It's dried out. Did I try with milk and ice? No, I haven't actually. Yeah, I did forget all about it. That's true. You did mention that. I will need to try that tomorrow and give it a go, and then report next week and see how that goes. In proven efficiency, quinine could still help against the new. Look, it's an ionophore, like tonic water, like quercetin. Is the other one. I can't remember who actually mentioned it to me, that you can also take. And that also is actually, that also has, I'm giving away too much information. That also has an inhibition on CD38 as well. So it's actually quite good in a number of regards. Not only as an ionophore, as a transporter of a positive ioned zinc to get it into the cell to stop replication. But you don't want to be doing that unless you've got the virus, because you need transcription factors to be still possible within that tissue. That means the cells in that tissue still need to transcript things. If you overload with some of these things without the disease, you're actually reducing the capacity of that tissue to transcript enzymes, the little nano machines to go around and do things. Not a good thing. That is why zinc can't get very easily into a cell. You only want to do that when the damn virus gets in there, to basically slow down its progression, give the immune system enough time to basically combat it. So do not take this stuff unless you have the virus. If you don't have the virus, it just stays in your kit box. As I've always said, ionophores are just to be kept in the box. to be taken at the first signs of disease. So be very careful. Do not, impede your transcription capacities of your cells. Not a good thing. Very unhealthy thing to do. Please do not do. Do not listen to the morons out there, the charlatans. Carnivores are just barely getting into deuterium. Yeah, that's true. And they don't really understand it anyway. Very few do, and very few understand the relationship between deuterium, melatonin production in the cell, and a lot of other functions. So, in the mitochondria and a lot of other functions. So we will be getting into those sort of things. I've been talking about them for a long time. I mean, even from, what was it, before I even got into YouTube, when I was doing stuff with back in the early days when I was doing just chats with Bart K, I was talking about deuterium and getting into it. Yeah, now some people are getting into it, are starting to understand, because I've put posts all over the place and I've discussed it all over the place, and many other people, Bart has, Jack has, and a few other people, and it's starting to be appreciated how to do that. I mean, if you want to reverse mitochondrial dysfunction, you need to deuterium deplete. There's a protocol. You take deuterium depleted water in certain quantities. You do a number of things that basically will transition you appropriately. You do not impede a number of these pathways until you've done a protocol. You've got to a certain stage, and then you can do other protocols, So, CD38 inhibitors have their time and when they come into utilization. So you really have to know where you are, at what state your system is in, before making the varying interventions to improve. And that's usually people that have got quite a lot of mitochondrial dysfunction. Some people that have turned up at my doorstep and asked me for help in that regard. But most people, it's less of an issue. If you're eating a species-appropriate diet, you will have a low deuterium diet anyway. So it's a non-issue. So did I. Got more duck things that you can poke a stick at. Yes, Hungarian ducks, apparently. Hi, Harry. Does caffeine increase estrogen? No. The sort of anti-nutrients that are in pretty much coffee are so low grade. Yeah, if you're really, things that really affect estrogen are other things. It's like even milk, not an issue. We're talking about, you can consume quite a bit and you'll get something like 5 or 6 nanograms of, and not even estradiol, which is the more potent one, but estrone, which is the least, which is usually what women get after they go into menopause. They produce more estrone rather than estradiol. So it's a non-issue, especially when men produce something like 53,000 nanograms per day, and women 630,000 per day on average. It varies around that. So it's zero issue. There's a lot of bullshit out there with a lot of things, and the things that really cause a lot of problems are inappropriate foods like soya-based foods. Things like wheat in large quantities, in particular. In small quantities, it's probably less of a problem. In large quantities, it's a problem. People over-exaggerate these things, unfortunately. Things like, xenoestrogens, microplastics in the environment, these sort of things, chemicals in the environment, which are other xenoestrogenic sort of things, putting into a microwave a whole lot of food in a plastic container, not a good thing. Get a glass container if you're going to use that. I don't use a microwave. I've got a microwave, but I haven't used it for years now. Just sitting there. I need to throw it out or give it to someone, because basically it just, I don't like I use now a small little mini cook oven to heat things up quickly. Much nicer, and the food tastes much better. So no, not an issue. So yeah. Would eating testicles boost testosterone? Look, organ meats have got a number of substances in them that will basically increase, and especially testicles have substances. It's a bit like, let me put it this way. What's the organ that has the most coenzyme Q10 in it? It's heart. And why? Because it's got more mitochondrial density than any other organ. Why? Because it needs to basically pump, or otherwise you're dead as a doornail. And it's the same thing. Certain organs will have certain minerals, certain things that actually give that animal much better, But then again, if the animal's been malnourished and the testicles are coming from an animal that's basically sick or whatever, they may not give you the same boost in terms of the micronutrients that would be helpful. But then again, there are other factors. Do you have a lot of xenoestrogens in your environment that are actually causing estrogenic and testosterone imbalances? Possibly. There could be other factors. I mean, I can't remember who. I think it was Fappers that actually asked me, because he was having some issues. And I said to him, look, get some boron. Now, you don't want to go over 20 milligrams of boron. You want to stay below, around about 12, because you're going to get some from food. You may end up 15. And that will actually suppress prolactin and suppress estrogen and rebalance your hormonal systems in a male really well. So if you do that for a month, you'll really sort things out pretty fast. Yes, your boner will become a hell of a lot stronger, I can tell you. So that will actually give you a better boost than some of the other stuff out there, because you're suppressing the things that are actually. And if you've got alopecia, like losing hair and stuff like that, boron is really good because it suppresses prolactin so massively. So that will increase, and you can actually see from my own hair the sort of, biotin also helps with hair. A lot of eggs I eat, so that's good as well. Cholesterol, all the other sort of stuff, which is really good for your boner. And yes, I'm not going to say that I'm a sex maniac, but I'm not going to even quote what my partner says. We will keep her out of the conversation, but all I can say is that these things do help. Let's put it that way. Yes. And don't worry about milk. Milk's really good. Just look at those Maasai warriors. Yes. What's he done now? More things, You've got one simple task: keep 2T under control. Oh God, disappointing. You're always curious. Curiosity killed the cat. You'll have your feathers ripped to pieces. What does boron do for ladies? It does help. It has for ladies. It sort of balances the hormones much better, which is a good thing. And if women have alopecia or whatever, it deals with that problem as well. But it tends to balance the hormones. It doesn't. It's not sort of. It works a bit differently. It's a bit like when men become less manly, their estrogen goes up, or their balance between estrogen and testosterone changes. It's something similar happens to women in reverse. Testosterone goes much higher. What boron tends to do is in the different sexes, it tends to regulate these things to a more normal level, which is a good thing. So when I didn't use the word correctly, saying it suppresses, it sort of brings it back to the sort of normal levels where these sort of things should be, because you still need all these hormones. So it tends to regulate these things better. It's also has a good regulatory effect on things like glucose metabolism as well. So it tends to have a lot of beneficial effects on a number of pathways in the thing. Yes. Really, direct sunlight on testicles boosts testosterone. Yes. Simple question. Yes, they do. In that regard, because or you can get a vitamin D cream as well. There are different options in that way. Because remember, when you're taking in a supplement, you've got a lot of tissue competing for that vitamin D. And then when it comes to the amount of tissue you expose, because normally, people used to be semi-naked and they would get much larger quantities to support most of their tissues. So today we expose ourselves far less. So yeah, technically speaking, by exposing it to that immediate area and converting it much closer there, it's probably going to, it will help in that regard. But just don't expose yourself in public and end up in jail. I don't know what the laws are in your country, so I can't, yes. Oversized budgie. Yeah, that's T2. I do have some hair loss, high testosterone, imbalanced hormones. Yeah, boron would help in that regard. Also, it would also, when it comes to alopecia, prolactin is actually much worse. So, and boron does push prolactin down. So it's probably a good thing in that regard. But do not go very high. So basically 12 milligrams, because you're going to get some from food. Over 20 milligrams, it's toxic. So stay within the safe limit. And the studies that have actually shown to basically suppress prolactin and these sort of things and bring the hormones back into sync have been 9 milligrams to 10 milligrams. So taking 12 is just sort of, because they come in 3 milligram tablets, and so you just can't find higher than that. So you take basically 4 a day, and that's how you do it in that regard. So it's just DIM supplement. Yep, I've used DIM supplements in the past as well. Yeah, they also help in that regard, but they don't deal with prolactin. It's more for DIM is more better for estrogen, but not for prolactin. And alopecia is related. Prolactin is related to alopecia more than basically estrogen. So yeah, so boron has a much better effect on basically alopecia in people. So yeah, I hope that helps you that have got a receding hairline. Fuck no. Who knows? Who cares? Can you imagine trying to scratch those balls with his beak? Fuck, that'd be painful. Rough as. But I think he'd like it. Is a concern. Good, we're at the bottom. Please. I need a question. Need input, need input, need input. Somebody has to make up the comedy. I can't leave it to T2 and T1. Hey, he's a bird. Do you think he's got testicles? There's got to be something in there. Anything. Harry, do you have any much knowledge on diet and autism? I would say low carb diet would be very helpful for the brain. Most brain issues are related to that. Now, I'm actually dealing with another person in the UK that has got her own issues, plus one of her sons has autism as well, and we're trying to get sorted at the moment. Remember the Israeli study I spoke to you guys about ages ago, how they're basically using a nasal spray of phosphatidylserine? These are phospholipids, and they basically are really good for the brain. If you get them at 600, a dose of 600 milligrams, you sort of get to a point where when you, through the nasal system, they go through the blood-brain barrier. And what they can do is they can silence genes that are part of neurodegeneration, and also influence certain, mediate, in a sense, certain signaling that affects then certain pathways that are involved in transcription factors, which are involved in proper brain functioning. And so they are a very great promise. We're just trying to source them at the moment. I'm still trying. I've tried to contact the company and all, and this sort of stuff. So stay tuned. I'm going to find a way to get this sort of stuff. And obviously, as an interim, I would say to people, increase the choline, in the diet of the child. Things which are like, your fat-soluble vitamins, your B vitamins, but in particular, choline is a really important thing for good functioning of the brain. Phospholipids are very important, whether they are acetylcholine, which is an important component for the brain in terms of both signaling and functionality, but also when it comes to, I'm going to kill that bird brain. And so, I would say up your choline for the person who, I don't know how you're related to the person, and also stay tuned about phosphatidylserine. So the problem is a lot of the supplements out there are useless. So we need to get either a liposomal, which are very expensive, or this Israeli one, which they're using a nasal spray to go in. This is research done at Tel Aviv University. So stay tuned. I'm trying to get more information and trying to source supplements of these type of supplements for people with things like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, MS, all these sort of things. So these two supplements would be very useful. So get the choline into your system, a couple of grams, and I'm trying as hard as possible to try and source a good source for phosphatidylserine, which is a nasal or a cheaper liposomal. So yeah, stay tuned. I'm trying. It's some of these companies don't respond, and some of these companies have gone belly up, so they don't exist anymore, and some are basically still in the process of still working at it. Yes. Anyway, yes, I do. It's private. That's my second answer. You fucking troll. Hey, you're supposed to be trolling the others, not me. What sort of fucking troll are you? Does the growth factor in milk have any effect on muscle building? Not in the way. Look, growth factors in milk. You know, they don't have an effect on our bodies because they are not like growth factors in humans. You know, humans have got a certain type of genetic transcripted growth factor. Other animals have their own genetically transcripted. So the growth hormones are there for receptors in the calves. We don't have those receptors, so we don't make use of them in that regard. So that's why they're not all these things that are a non-issue, you know, that people make a big fuss about. But generally speaking, whey doesn't stay in very long, and I would not rely on whey, because whey is good as a pre-workout, like half an hour before you do a workout, because it has double the insulin effect of glucose. So it will really spike muscle protein synthesis, but then it drops off rapidly. So you then want something like casein or eggs, steak, general dairy, because dairy is low in whey and very high in casein, and that is a much slower type of effect it has. So it actually tends to work at a much slower rate through your system. I do have, but I haven't actually done a video yet, but I have emailed it to a number of people who are into bodybuilding. I do have the old bodybuilders sort of supplement that Arnold and many others, which Vince actually developed for them. You know, the Italian bloke, the Italian bodybuilder that trained Arnold and many of the others. And so I do have some of that stuff that they used back then, the old methods, the old smoothies that they used and all that. So if you want the actual smoothie that they use, how to make it for yourself, just email me to my email address and I'll send you the information. So, you know, hope that helps. But, you know, the advantage of that compared to a casein supplement, which only gives you muscle protein synthesis for 4 hours, that will give you for 6. You'll get an additional boost in that regard. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was into eggs and steak, and they also back then they used this Vince and many others. You know, they used this sort of smoothie which was egg based and dairy based, which they used. So it was a well known amongst the bodybuilding sort of fraternity in California at the time. But since then, it's sort of fallen out of fashion because, you know, a lot of things like whey supplements and casein supplements and all these other supplements, powders and bovine powders came out and all that sort of stuff. And really a lot of this information's just been lost. But the good thing about those sort of things that they did back then is they built really big, much stronger and leaner bodies. So if you want the information, I'll send it to you in that regard. So I would like to know what water sources is deuterium content low. It has to be depleted deuterium, or there is a fractionation of water depending on the elevation. So the higher you go up, there's more UV radiation that's coming down and basically affecting the sort of the fractionation of and depleting the level of deuterium in the water. So if you go to a spring in the mountains, that water will have much lower parts per million than water at sea level. Simple as that. It's one reason why I believe the Inuit a lot of them lost the ability to go into ketosis for prolonged periods of time, for the simple reason that you need more long chain fats to create more metabolic water to displace. In particular, so if you're more reliant on fatty acids, you will displace and create more metabolic water that can displace the deuterium that you're getting from the water from your environment. So at sea level, you're getting ice water and stuff like that, which is high in deuterium. And that can be toxic to your mitochondria over time. And I think that's where that genetic change happened. And a lot of people say, oh, that's the proof that ketosis is bad. Bullshit. There are many other populations out there that for long periods in ketosis, tribal populations don't have a problem, but they are in an environment where they can deplete deuterium with solar radiation. So there are reasons for all that. That's my hypothesis. And if anybody can come up with a better hypothesis, good luck to them. Nobody else has come up. They've just come up with a lot of ridiculous arguments because Chris Master John and many others have just come up with ridiculous arguments. Why? Because they can't come up with anything better. They just now want to slag ketosis and low carb diets and stuff like that because it fits their narrative, unfortunately. Yeah, it is good. Conjugated linoleic acid, yep, which is a sort of a trans fat, which is has a lot of positive things to the body. It's probably overstated in some regards, but it's definitely good. It takes too much folate. Is too much folate a bad thing? I'm GG. Trying to remember the SNP. Let me just check that SNP. I remember which one of the MTHFR SNPs it is, because there's two major ones. Yes. 180119 each. Some increased peripheral neuropathy risk in older adults. That's not the one that I was thinking of. That's very small. Yeah, that's basically has to do with both choline and folate metabolism. So basically up your choline slightly. That should sort out those issues with folate metabolism. Yeah, so I mean, if you're basically, I wouldn't go too high. If you're getting enough folate from liver, and you're getting enough folate from eggs and stuff like that, you're getting the levels you need, and you're in balance with B12, more or less, not an issue. I would support also because those enzymes are more related, that they are related back to the choline metabolism as well. So add a bit more to support that. That's what I would do. Even though they're saying here about the polymorphism, which is the the sort of the alleles like GT type alleles, I think still, I mean, this is a risk in endometriosis and stuff like that as well for women. If they've got this SNP, it does create issues with endometriosis and stuff like that, and fertility. But I would basically, I'd focus on upping my side in terms of choline. Get your basically your folate into normal levels and B12 in normal levels, and just add a bit more to support the pathways that are interacting with this SNP. So, yep, that's exactly it. Yeah, so that's what I would take. Don't go crazy. See, the biggest problem when you go crazy on folate, it burns through B12. Not a good thing. So do not go high on these methylfolate things and stuff like that. Eat a bit of liver, more liver each week to get good levels. Eat some extra eggs and up slightly to support the other pathway. Both not only because choline not only is involved in the sort of methylation pathway, the second methylation pathway, but there's a branch of that also is involved in some anti-inflammatory effects as well. So that also relates to basically peripheral sort of neuropathy stuff and all that. The other thing that you will find very interesting, it also intersects with CD38. Yeah, I know. That little fucker's all over the place, believe me, everywhere. It's endemic. This is one thing that people are not aware of, the relationship between NAD in the mitochondria, metabolic water, and CD38. So the deuterium side, I mean, when I'm talking metabolic water, think deuterium. Okay? There is a nexus there, and it does affect the transcription, the transcription factors of these genes as well. So, yes. And basically, it's not only, as I said, nice and that is good in that regard, but stick to lower doses. We don't want to cause too many issues. No idea, mate. No idea. Don't know. Absolutely don't know. Actually, somebody asked me today, I can't remember who, that Macola has brought out this new, what do you call it? H2 molecular hydrogen water, some new sort of fangle thing. Don't buy it. I just checked it. It's a method of alkalinizing water. Alkaline water is high in deuterium. You can't alkalinize water. Water which is more acidic is low in deuterium. Think stomach acid, think your stomach, think and all that, so no, alkaline water is shit. Your body has got its lungs and it's got its kidneys to basically regulate acidity throughout all the different tissues at the different pHs. That's why you've got it. Unless you've got a lung issue or a kidney issue, only then. The other nice thing about it, when you inhibit CD38, you actually improve your lung functioning and your kidney functioning. More to be learned, kiddies, about this important regulate. We don't want to suppress it entirely. We want to regulate to those more youthful levels, and we will live longer and healthier as a consequence, and we will keep cancer and everything else at bay. So anyway, let's move on. But sorry, no idea. It's probably just got the same sort of levels as water. Maybe it comes from a slightly higher elevation in the mountains. I'm not sure. I think it may, which may mean it may have slightly lower deuterium, but minuscule. We're talking about 2 or 3 parts per million in regards. But even 2 or 3 parts per million can make a big difference. I mean, the difference between, for instance, olive oil, which is 130 parts per million, and tallow and butter is about 5 parts per million. Not much. Actually, with butter, it's 6 parts per million. That's right. So it's not much at all. So it doesn't have to be massive to have a bit of an effect. So it probably is better if it's coming from a higher elevation, which I believe it is. So, but how much? No idea. But it's probably better than tap water. Let's put it that way. Anyway, Harry, intro stem cell stuff. I love to increase my production in a not expensive and healthy way. I know that with stem cells, there are a couple of things out there in that regard. I will be doing something. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember the actual names, but I will be doing a thing in regards to also this CD38 there are certain things that also can help with FOXO3 and a number of other pathways, which are really important in terms of inflammation and in terms of stem cell and SIRT3. That's right, as well. It plays a role. And I mean, obviously, when it comes to SIRT1 and stuff like that, you're really looking at niacin and things like that also help for those sort of pathways, which do support, better stem cell production as well. All these things they interact in a complex way. I mean, sometimes we talk in a very reductionist way, in a separate way, but really they're all interacting in a very complicated symphony, so to speak. But yeah, look, I'll do something down the track, which I'll go into it. If you want something immediately, I know that the actual nutraceutical that Bart sells is really good. I've actually looked into it, and it does really. But like anything, you may be able to upregulate stem cells, but you don't know where they're going to go. They could go anywhere. So if you've got a bad heart, as an example, and a bad eye, they won't go to the eye, they'll go to the heart, because the body will prioritize what organ is more important for survival. So you may need to take them then for a much longer period of time. And most of the stuff out there tend to be more expensive. The cheapest way to increase stem cells is fasting and exercise. Zero cost, only your time. I love your bird rain. Harry, is isotronic sound treatment a witchcraft, or is it actually effective for better sleep? No idea. Don't know. Yeah, no idea. Have you got yourself some blue blocking glasses? Have you basically, are you eating in daylight and not at night to improve your melatonin production? Are you reducing your exposure to blue light as much as possible? Yeah, all those sort of things. So, yeah, what is the state of your mitochondria? Because that also, remember, melatonin is produced there. So there's a lot of factors that at play for better sleep. So it depends on your circumstances. When you eat meat, or when you eat, do you find it difficult to get into ketosis? The more difficult somebody finds it to get into fat oxidation, the more it tells me that they've got a mitochondrial dysfunction that could be affecting their sleep as well. So there are a lot of issues in that regard. I'll be basically covering a lot of these points on how to fix mitochondria, to repair them, because you do not want, a lot of people out there are promoting biogenesis of new mitochondria. Not a lot of people, a very small crowd it is, of select people. I know some of them, but I disagree with them. Because if you've got damaged mitochondria, the last thing you want to be doing is pushing a whole lot of NAD plus and all this sort of other stuff in there and basically tearing those electron chains to bits, because they just can't handle it. You need to first, deal with the culprits, start the repair process, and then to enhance those mitochondria, and then to copy them. Because when you're biogenesing, you're copying. You don't want to be copying bad things. You want to be copying good things that are healthy, because that's going to basically give you better mitochondrial density that's healthy and can do the job. If they're all damaged and they're all basically producing glucose, they can only, ferment glucose. Well, it's not a good thing, is it? No. So this is the problem with a lot of people. Get your supplement here, get you this here, get you that there, in a very crazy way. And what ends up happening is they do more harm to people than good. So, but I've never heard of this sound treatment. Don't know. Could be witchcraft, but I don't think so. Look, there are certain types of sounds that can actually be calming. So it's a bit like certain tones that are used in yoga or in Eastern type of medicine that can actually have a toning effect and sort of, much better for your brain and all that. But, while that may be the case, how effective are they? Don't know. Never seen any science on it. There's a lot of anecdotes, but that's all I can say. I mean, you can basically, from better living patterns, reducing your blue light exposure, and meditation and stuff like that, you probably actually get as much benefit as with the sound. But I don't know enough, in that regard. Look, I won't call it witchcraft, but because sounds do have, our cells do resonate, and there are sensors that can actually detect different wavelengths of sound, light, and everything else. We've got melanopsin and photoreceptors all over our bodies, so it does have an effect, but it's not a primary thing. It's a more calming thing, not so much for sleep. So if you want to sort of lower your cortisol levels, that sort of stuff together with yoga and all that will help calm you down. Breathing exercise will help you calm you down, but ultimately you need to have this sort of circadian sort of flow. That means, as an example, the last thing you want to be doing is taking vitamin D3 supplements in the evening. You suppress melatonin, which means you get a real bad sleep. So when do you want to take vitamin D? Right in the middle of the day, lunchtime. Why? Because that's when you usually would have got the highest level of exposure. So think in terms of circadian rhythms, the way you combine food, supplements, and everything else will get you the best results in terms of just general living, stress, sleeping, and everything else. Melatonin is the most important to basically to go between cortisol, and cortisol is not bad. It's only when it's chronic. Okay. You need to go through cortisol through the daytime. You need to be less inflamed in the daytime. You need to basically be pushing all the, let's build, let's grow, let's fix things, let's put additional tissue, let's eat, let's learn, and all that. And in the evening, you'll be slightly a bit more inflamed. Cortisol is lower, so you've got less capacity to suppress that inflammation because cortisol's lower, but you're actually healing at that moment. So that inflammation is basically pushing up all these pathways to heal, and that's why in the evening. But it's also a reason why people that are very sick are more susceptible. Usually they get sicker at night. Heart attacks are more prone to happen early in the morning or at night. A lot of these different things for the same reasons, because you're repairing, and that repair also is pushing up certain pathways, which normally are fine in a healthy person, but an unhealthy person can be a problem. So yeah, there's that's a bit of a side spin on my side. Me, I have to go to the nth degree with some things, but yeah, 36 eggs a day diet, good for you. If it doesn't bother you, that's fine. I mean, are you trying to beat the record of that old geezer, 88-year-old that had been doing for half his life, 25 eggs on average a day? Yeah. Oh well, whatever works for you. God, I only have about, at most, a couple of eggs a day. Sometimes I'll give eggs a miss, and I'll have another day where I'll do 8 eggs or 6 eggs in that regard. But yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Let's put it that way. I know. Look, I know the old. If you're into, I'm not into bodybuilding and stuff like that. You know, I know a lot about it, and I do some light weights and stuff like that. Nothing big anymore. I used to when I was younger. I used to do bodybuilding, but I don't anymore. It's, so I'm sort of over that sort of thing. That was when I was in my 20s. That's a long, long, long time ago. Now I'm in my mid 50s. So, completely different point in my time. But look, they're good. When it comes, dairy is more anabolic, and so is eggs and that sort of stuff. So if you're trying to build, it's good. As long as you combine it with a good exercise regime. Yep. There you go. Yeah, look, I know what he. Yeah, I've never been shown any science, So that the fertile eggs that they were. I was never, look, they are eggs combined with dairy tend to have a very good anabolic effect. It's primarily because of the large amount of cholesterol in them. You're getting massive amounts of cholesterol, so you're getting a massive support for for testosterone production, for just your general hormonal. It really just ramps it up, and there's a bit of truth in that. There is a bit of truth in that. Does it compare to a light steroid cycle? Don't know. No idea, whether it does or doesn't. But I'd rather do the eggs than the steroids. Much naturaler thing. Those guys didn't have steroids back then, like the guys today, and they were still able to build great physiques. So I don't think you need steroids, and I think they are very unhealthy, and they cause a lot of issues. So eventually you'll grow out of that phase like I did, and you'll be more focused on longevity and health, and you may look back and say, why did I do that? So no, please don't do steroids, not even light. Stick to, and if you want that smoothie, please let me know and I'll send it to you. Yeah, or any other information in regards to some of the old techniques that they used, just ask me and I'll get the information for you. But, don't put your health at risk, please. Yep, exactly. Damn, I lived on salmon for a week. Well, it's not a bad, it's a high protein food. Probably not enough fat in it. So, but if you've got enough body fat, it's probably not an issue. But I wouldn't do it for for long periods of time. But yeah, it's not going to kill you. Christina, please. Don't challenge them. When you put the challenge out there, they're likely to basically take it up until they end up, yes, very, very flatulent and sick. Yes. These boys can overdo it sometimes. Yeah, it is basically that amount. Pretty much it was just, three trays, 3 dozen, that was pretty much the way they did it. But also, look, some of them, when they actually did all these smoothies and stuff like that, they also took things like laxatives and a few other things because, when you're having so much dairy products and stuff like that, and a lot of things like that, that's putting a lot of strain on the digestive system, because these guys are trying to just pump in as much food and nutrients as possible to sort of to build up, and they're just pumping iron all the time. So I know what it's like. A friend of mine, in my old neighborhood when I was in Greece in the 70s, close to my school, he basically had an area there with a sort of a training area, and we, all us youngsters, we would literally go there. And even when I moved to the other neighborhood, I'd still turn up with my bicycle, go down there, and basically do some weights and stuff like that. So, and it was all in those days, because there was no powders, there was nothing. It was just basically eggs, dairy, shitloads of dairy, shitloads of eggs, and it was just basically, just sometimes. So yes, I sort of got over it because it was just too much. I just, I wasn't a big eater, which was really hard for me to basically put so much food down. I just couldn't. I just, I still struggle, with eating a lot of food. Oops, just overshot. You're welcome, mate. Do you know anything about Asia water? No idea. If it's alkaline, definitely not good. If it's not, you probably don't have an issue in that regard. So, hello. Zombie Mech Bang is back. Good to see you. New photo. I just noticed, because your other one was a bit different last time, I think. Hope I'm right. Yes, yeah. Smarter water and vitamin water. Yeah, look, I don't really get into those sort of fancy waters. I'll tell you, don't really know much about them. I'm more concerned about whether the water is standard water from a spring in the mountains, which is going to be better, or whether it's basically from sort of from a lower area, in a sense. So that's the sort of stuff that I'm sort of interested. Where is it from? So the source, to be more precise, what is the source of the water? Definitely avoid, as much as possible, please, if I have to say so, avoid alkaline waters. They're high in deuterium. They're very bad for your mitochondria. Do not consume those, please. And a lot of if you go to tourism destinations around the world, sometimes a lot of the waters that they actually have are all these friggin' alkaline waters. So please avoid them. So glasses, blue blocking glasses, I suspect you mean infrared and daylight eating. Yeah, stick to daylight eating, much better. That's what our ancestors did. They did not eat in the evenings, because when you eat in the evenings, you're basically your body's actually starting to shut down digestion and trying to push up melatonin so you can get to sleep properly. So when you actually basically pushing food in, you're really just stuffing all that up. Yes, that's not a good idea. I mean, occasionally, because you have to be sociable, you go out, you have a meal, yeah, fine. But yeah, I wouldn't do it on a regular basis. I will be making a video on that. It's a long, drawn-out process. It involves deuterium. It involves melatonin. It involves a number of things. And it involves, so it's sort of a light water sort of effect, plus then at certain strategic points, once we can measure things at a certain point, then we can move to improving the, by bringing down. So first we need to clear out sort of the bad water, the deuterium enriched water, in a sense, to dilute it, bring it down. Then we need to basically repair, and then, which is basically the mitochondrial through melatonin. It's a potent repair antioxidant thing. We also need to suppress CD38, but not initially, but at the later stage. These are stage by stages, and I will explain them when I do my videos exactly how they need to be done properly, because if you do them incorrectly, you do more damage than good. So, and a lot of people are throwing supplements in and thinking they're doing good, and sometimes they're doing more damage. That makes it much harder then to reverse. So please do not experiment until I explain it thoroughly in a very simplified, plain English way. That is coming later this month or early next month, the video. I've done a bit of it, putting together the material, but I've still haven't done it, so to speak. So I've got the material bits here or there. There's some of the studies and some of the stuff that I'm going through and putting it together. But at some point, then I will properly do it in a proper presentation. It's probably going to be a 2 or 3 part series. I haven't decided yet. Still working on that. How much material I'm going to throw in or not. So it may be the first part, sort of getting into some of the protocols of repair, explanation, some of the protocols, and then going into some of the substances and how to time them and put them, and how to go and do, and what sort of tests to do to measure where you're at, so you can go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. So yeah, it's a bit more, it will take ages to go into it. So it's not a 5-minute answer, so to speak. Okay. That's good. Yeah, I'm out in 5 minutes, which is good. So more on eggs. What is it with you? Bird brainy. Yep, I am. There are better ways of actually, and you will learn them. And they are all part of, boron plays a role, don't get me wrong, to better improve it. But ultimately, it's mitochondrial function. That's really what it is. So a lot of these hormones, they can create a lot of issues health-wise down the track in the long run. They're not good. So testosterone replacement therapy, for the people that don't understand what we're talking about. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't be promoting it. And the thing is, the good thing is, once you get your mitochondria to be more youthful in their performance, these are the things that I've been starting to do in the last 2 years, and sort of I've, as I've shown you in the past, less compared to my past 10 years ago, when I had my cardiovascular disease, I'm much healthier now, reversed. I've got no scarring in the heart anymore. It's all eliminated. So there's no scarring, which is good. The heart is back to normal in a sense. So there's no scarring. It works, pumps properly. Because if it's got scar tissue, it doesn't function as well, as efficient. So that's been sorted out. There's good blood perfusion. That's been sorted out. So there's less calcification in the arteries. That's also been sorted out. So a lot of things are basically on the up and up, improving. But I've also focused on trying to make my skin more youthful, more elastic, so it sort of bounces back. See, it's so firm you can hardly grab it because it's so firm, I didn't have, I don't, under here. You know what I mean? That's youthful, you know, and good muscle tone as well, But at the same time, for my size, that is. But at the same time, it's because I'm starting to push on these pathways. I've been experimenting on myself with this sort of stuff to make myself look more younger in that regard. So, sort of my skin in general, I mean, you've seen me before, the sort of stuff. It's not like other people in their 50s, especially people that have gone through cardiovascular disease and stuff like that. They are very unhealthy. And I lost a lot of weight, nearly 20 odd kilos. So, I didn't get the flabs or anything like that. So I did all these things that tighten the skin, the fat soluble vitamins that control the collagen degrading enzymes, all this sort of stuff in high doses, MK4, things like niacin, which is also good for the skin, but not too much to impede certain pathways which are important to normal functioning. You want to stay below 300 milligrams with niacin. You don't want to go above that. You affect gluconeogenesis, you affect lipolysis, you affect a whole lot of other things in your mitochondria. Not good. Okay? So, because there was one guy that was actually saying he's taking 1,000 milligrams, and I go, are you listening to all those crackpots that are telling you you're going to have a long life? Not a good thing. You've got to be very careful what you do. But that's the problem. You can be 54 years old. When I get to 60 in 6 years' time, I'm trying to push the youthfulness even further. I'm not holding back. Fuck them. They want to become old. Good luck to them. I'm interested in basically how to reverse these things, how to properly, in a step-by-step way, make adjustments to the body. These guys just say, oh, throw all this in. Yeah, don't you realize that that's interacting with that, that's interacting with that? That will, when you do that sort of stuff, you just end up with a mess. Because everything has a dose. Too much of something is bad. Too little of something is bad. You need to know exactly where the dose is and apply the dose appropriately. That is the smartness. I always say, MDs, they just throw drugs at the problem. And the naturopaths, the NDs, they just throw vitamins and minerals at the problem. They think more is best. What a load of crap. It just creates imbalances and all sorts of other health problems for those people. Doesn't solve anything. That's why their clients are recurring and just get recycled through the system continuously. And most of the people out there selling products, I've got a day job. I'm not selling you anything. I don't need to. I don't need your money. So, you're getting stuff that basically would take years of research. That's what you're getting for free, in a sense. And, my approach is use appropriate nutraceuticals in the appropriate way with food, with exercise, with fasting, with a lot of other activities, with mindful thinking, with a bit of yoga and stuff like that, with breathing exercises, all that sort of stuff to enhance your life, lower your stress levels and stuff like that. All these things. Communicate with your partner in order to sort out things. And because, when you're in a relationship, you've got another person there, you need to basically interact and communicate with that person. If you want good health, you need to basically be interested in their health and their state of mind as well. It goes both ways. So these are all important things as part of living. Send me an email and we'll go through, because I need to know exactly what your circumstances are. And I don't like people giving me all their private stuff and putting them out in the public for everyone to see. So just give me an idea of what your state of affairs is. Usually sleep apnea has a lot to do with overweight. If you're overweight, that can be an issue. So when you lose weight, sleep apnea usually recedes as well. But there's a whole lot of other things as well. There may be other things. You may have underlying some other issues. You also may have things like, if you're a premature baby or something like that, this whole area may have not developed in the appropriate way. And there are certain exercises you can do with your mouth to sort of, change this sort of frontal, the mewing stuff and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things you can do. And that's another thing to look into, mewing, in order to basically improve the sort of the structures over here. But the older you are, it becomes a bit more difficult as well. But anyway, email me and we'll have a bit of a chat and go into more details. Look, it does with a lot of people. That's true. So it depends sort of how many alleles you have, and also that I tend to, this is personally me, I don't get constipated, and at most I'll get a number 3. Today I was a number 4, which is normal. I go once a day, every day nearly, and it's usually a number 4, which is normal. But sometimes I'll get a number 3, which is a bit of bits which are not, it's smooth, but there's a bit of like cracks and a bit of things which are drier. And sometimes that maybe I haven't hydrated enough, or I've dehydrated from a lot of exercise. It can be a number of factors. It's not just, there's a number of issues that can be at play. So, you could play with a bit of hydration, because if you're doing quite a lot of physical exercise and stuff like that, you're losing more electrolytes, you're losing more fluids and stuff like that. So that can be a factor as well. So you sort of have to manage that side of things as well. So play around with some electrolytes and water. Because remember, even salt, extra salt does help in, so can reduce constipation as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So yeah, fluids and salt, and yeah, see how you go, and see how you can make just certain adjustments throughout the day. I mean, your body when it's actually, because you guys are in the northern hemisphere at the moment. It's summer, so you will be perspiring more. You will be basically losing more fluids and more electrolytes. So it's, and if you're low carb, you've got lower insulin, so you don't have as much. You're not retaining fluids like somebody on a high carbohydrate diet would. Due to high insulin, you retain fluids much more. So that's the other issue. 1 gram will retain 3.5 in terms of water or mils. So and that's another reason why people get edema and stuff like that on high carbohydrate diets. They retain so much fluids. But so yeah, so basically play around with your fluids and your electrolytes, and if you're struggling to get them right, send me an email, and we'll chat to sort of, so I can get more details. Somebody's in incognito. Yes. I have my moments when I'm in incognito as well. Oh, good for you. Yes. Under 12, not more. Remember, high doses are toxic. Please do not go too high. And get also more biotin in, which means more eggs, which is also good for that sort of issue. Basically zinc, eggs. And the other good thing about eggs is it's got selenium that support the thyroid. So selenium and zinc are the key nutrients that convert T4 to T3. You need iodine as well. So that's also important. If you get those right, usually you'll do well. So let me know. Send me an email. If you're basically, if things within a month, you're really not getting much traction, send me an email, please. And, with some details, so I've got a bit of an understanding exactly what you did over that month. So I can actually notice, But if you want a few extra pointers, just explain your circumstances, send me an email tomorrow or whatever, explaining your circumstances, and I'll get to it at some time next week. It won't happen immediately because I do have a day job. So I do reply within the week. Sometimes at rare cases, I will reply 8 or 9 days later, sometimes earlier. It depends on what I've got happening in my life or work-wise. So, yep. Now, some prominent keto carnivores say you need to supplement electrolytes. No, you don't. Especially potassium and magnesium. No, you don't. Because the source is depleted. Any truth in this? Yes, the soils are depleted, but we don't eat. We don't eat a diet which is plant-based, so it's not an issue. Look, the biggest problem that most carnivores do, or especially keto people do, they don't get enough sodium in. It's simple as that. And if you don't get enough sodium, you deplete the other electrolytes. Okay, let me explain. What's in seawater? There are two things that are prominent in seawater as part of the electrolytes: calcium and sodium in seawater. All cells, from the most simple form of cell to the most complex form of cell, are originated in the ocean. Okay? So they have evolved in an evolutionary history in a high calcium, high sodium environment. Okay? We've got that part. In the cells themselves, that's where there's a lot of potassium in your bloodstream. It's all in the cells, potassium and magnesium. Remember, ATP, adenotriphosphate, it's not ATP, it's called MgATP, magnesium ATP. That's what it is. So you need magnesium in as a cofactor for energy production. Okay? So that's where magnesium should be in the cell, and that's where potassium should be in the cell, not in the bloodstream as much. So how do you balance that? Well, there is a potassium sodium pump, and there is the gradient potential of that is dependent on the pressure differential on both ends. So just think of it. There's a hole here, and you've got water, and if it's in balance, it's fine. But if you take a whole lot of water out of here, this will go down. The other side will go down to balance itself out because more water will come in to the cell because you've taken it out of the cell to balance, to get homeostasis. That is how this potassium sodium pump works. So what happens is, if you go low salt, you will dump all these electrolytes out of your cells. Then when you go high, you'll basically create that differential and not only basically flood with too much water, which is higher in deuterium and do damage to your mitochondria, which isn't a good thing. Not only flood your cells with too much water, but at the same time, and this is where people get this puffiness, that's where it's coming from, this puffiness. And this is why and what do doctors say? Rather than actually fixing the potassium, this balance properly, they go, we need to put you on a low sodium diet. And they even get more waterlogged because they find a different homeostasis. And they just have to eat one food, fast food or junk food, that's got more sodium, and the imbalances again. And it's an endless cycle of misery for most people out there. So how do you correct this? If you're low on that, you take supplements. I say, if you're going to take supplements, you take them from a small period. So you go and get things like potassium salts, and also and you pump up to 4,000 milligrams, and you pump in those sort of things for a couple of days, and you pump in your sodium as well, and you keep your sodium high. You can withdraw now the supplements completely and just get enough from the food that will be pushed into those cells. And as long as you're putting enough sodium in the system, we used to consume 10 times the sodium because we had no refrigeration in the past. And that's why nobody ever had an electrolyte imbalance, because all the potassium and magnesium that they got from their food went into those cells and stayed there, because there was so much sodium on the outside that the body found homeostasis, and the kidney said, we've got too much salt. So it dumped the rest in the urine and it pissed it out. And you maintained. So, and as long as you're eating plenty of salt, you're dumping any excess, you're finding homeostasis, not an issue. That gradient, the potential gradients of the pump remains fairly stable. Do you need supplements? No, from there on. As long as you get back to the traditional mindset and say, I don't have a fridge, I need to basically salt my food to preserve it so it doesn't rot. So you go back to that mindset. But if you've lost the other electrolytes and you pump in a whole lot of salt, you're going to push up, you're going to basically push up blood pressure. You're going to cause all sorts of imbalances. This is what they don't explain to you, how human physiology works. So if you've fucked yourself up by doing too long fasts and you've created these imbalances, fix them with supplementation, and then keep your sodium levels to maintain that good homeostasis. That's it. It's simple, So I hope that helped. Okay. No booze before bedtime. Definitely not. Check your blood pressure. If it's high, find out why. I think we just got into that conversation, because low sodium can also give you high blood pressure as high sodium if that balance is not there. It's the balance, nothing to do. And obviously, when you're eating a species inappropriate diet that causes high retention of fluids and creates these dilution and these imbalances, that's what usually exacerbates this problem. But most of these people just end up waterlogged, holding this sodium in, so they don't get dizzy, in a way where they lose a lot of their electrolytes because they're holding it all in because of the high insulin. But they just basically get more puffy, more waterlogged, more edema and things like that, and get more sick and diabetic and whatever else. And they just keep on pumping them with a whole lot of antidiuretics to pump all the water out. And it's just, what an existence. But well, welcome to the modern medical system. Are you also snoring? Who are you talking? Yes. Well, if he's got an apnea, he's definitely snoring. Okay, carnivore and dry skin. Carnivore and dry skin. I was struggling with very dry skin, being carnivore. Okay. Are you getting enough fat-soluble vitamins? Are you getting sufficient hydration? Are you basically getting enough fat? Fat is hydrating to the skin. A lot of carnivores sometimes eat too much protein, not enough fat. Not a good thing. You need to get those fat-soluble vitamins in. Very important. For skin elasticity, MK4. For a lot of things, the collagen-degrading enzymes use 3 key fat-soluble vitamins: retinol, vitamin D3, and metaquinone 4, which is the animal form of vitamin K2, the only one you should have in your diet. And don't supplement with MK7, because a third of the population can't even convert it to the animal form. So it's a waste of money. Anyway. Can't help myself. You know me, exhibitionist. Don't encourage me, please. We'll scare the natives off. I'm going to get a new bed soon. Any advice on getting a healthy one? Get a good firm mattress. Basically, remember, we used to sleep on the ground as humans. The ground is firm. So get a good mattress that is firm. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Bird race quad. God almighty, you're giving him a bit of stick, aren't you? Okay, it's really dry, is it? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. There's no real upper toxic level. There is nothing in the literature. And the funny thing is, you can give yourself high doses of MK4 and it just sucks it in. And I can tell you, you will notice it. Got one lady that just reported she's only been doing for about 4 days, and she noticed a reduction in tartar. So yes, if you do 45 milligrams, which is very high doses, but we're trying to decalcify her, and within 4 days, she noticed her teeth were cleaner. So it does remove tartar, plaquing and stuff like that, and also, clears up soft tissue, and that's important, soft tissue calcification in the kidneys. So some people, like this lady, she's got really disturbed electrolyte issues, again, due to the high calcification of her kidneys. So we've got her on I've got her on high doses to try and actually decalcify. It's going to take a while, but that's the plan. So yes, very important to decalcify soft tissue in that regard. That stuff should be in the bones, not in the soft tissue. Well, you need a small amount in the soft tissue, and that's more to suppress viruses, because calcium can be used for that as well. And MK4 is the key component that drives it in there to suppress those little fuckers. Anyway, so yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do, Uncle Alf. So, if you're healthy and you've got no issue, you're not dealing with any issues or whatever, and you're consuming things like brie, liver, organ meats and all that, they are high in MK4. Emu oil is also high in, it's basically just MK4, eggs, MK4. So pretty much all the animal foods primarily are MK4. It's just the dairies, some of them have a few of the other menoquinones. Very few have some have menoquinone 7, but it's usually some of the other menoquinones out there, like 5, 9, some of the others that are out there that are basically also more prominent in some cheeses, especially hard cheeses, the yellowy type cheeses. Brie is 100% MK4. So is Camembert. And I love brie. Yes. So it's one of my popular cheeses. But if you're trying to decalcify, you've got issues, you've got a lot of plaque, or you've got a lot of in your blood vessels, or a lot of in your teeth, you've got a lot of tartar and stuff like that, and you want to decalcify, go for higher doses. You're not going to get any harm from it. So yes, so keep that in mind. And I have not seen an upper toxic level at all. So I suspect any excess the body will excrete. So it tends to suck it up. One thing about it, if you put MK4 into the system, it doesn't last very long. It gets just, like a sponge, the entire, and this is the reason why a lot of these, if you go to the supplement, see, they want to sell your product, which is called MK7, which comes from natto. And they want to make money. They don't give a shit that a third of the population can't even convert it to the animal form. It's a bit like beta-carotene issues, which some people have. And the other 2/3 have difficulties of different levels. There's only a very small percentage of the population that are very good converters. The majority aren't. So that's why they try and push these other supplements. And that's why they stay in circulation in the bloodstream all day, because they're not being taken up. It's a bad thing when you've got, it's like, for instance, having too much iron in your blood circulating, because ceruloplasmin requires copper. You don't have enough copper in your diet. And oops, we've got an issue. So it's the same thing. These things should not be circulating. They should be either stored or used. They should not be circulating. But the problem is the modern convention is, if they circulate, they're there. Oh, I noticed them. Give us a fucking break. It's because these people are selling a product. They don't care about the consequences. And I do have issues with that. There's some anecdotal evidence that if it circulates for too long and degrades in the bloodstream, MK7, it potentially could become a pro-oxidant. So not a good thing, especially if you're trying to deal with a cardiovascular issue of decalcifying and you can't convert the damn thing. So I think a lot of people are basically getting the wrong message, unfortunately. He's still got his bloody, if you're not basically focused on your ball bags, you're focused on your eggs. Yes, a dirty dozen. Yeah, I know the ones you're talking about. I'm just kidding. The McGregor dirty dozen. But I thought I'd throw the eggs in there just to stir you up. They love the Uncle Alf. Keep an eye on these Uncle Alf. You can't trust these two. Okay. Yep. Okay. Mate, we'll work on it. There's plenty of hacks. Not really. I mean, my cousin, most of my family have got big sort of like necks that are basically not. I don't have actually Harry, my other cousin, my dad's youngest brother, he's got a big really neck, but he used to play rugby. So if you build up this upper body, because you do certain exercises for these sort of sports, so you can actually have a big neck from specific sports as well. There are certain exercises you can do, and also close in type of exercises. Like when you do a close in exercise, you actually build your back and you build the muscles around here, these firm muscles here around your neck. So there are those sort of things as well. But yes, generally speaking, it usually is fat in the body and fat in the neck and fat, yes, exactly. That's true. And it's usually the fat, not so much the visible fat, but the inside fat, which is sort of constricting that airway, which is a big problem. So yes, these people are definitely not muscular around the neck. They are fat and flabby around the neck, and I've seen them. Some of these people, they've got like multiple chins. They've got flabs like there's no tomorrow on their chins. I remember this guy. I was at a bus stop, and he had these multiple chins, and he was struggling to breathe while he was standing there. It was just fuck. You can imagine the state that he would be when he was sleeping. Yes, all that fat around the neck just drooping down. Ugh, scary. Yes, so we need to differentiate. I just wanted to make that clear so people don't get the wrong idea. And it's actually a good thing to strengthen those back muscles, because they go from here, this part, right to the back here. So right, and you really can build really strong, bulky type muscles if you're into that sort of stuff we're talking about now. So because a lot of people sort of do they pull themselves up wide rather than close, and that close will build up all this around the neck and back and these forward parts, and really strengthen them and sort of give them a bit more pronouncement in terms of tissue size. Just if anybody wants to know who does that sort of stuff. Yes, I think, I'm a bit concerned about the sort of taping when people are that far. I think the best thing is to get them to lose the damn weight. They're just carrying too much bloody weight. They really need to come down on the weight side. They need to be on low carb, ketogenic type diets. I told you he's crazy. Yeah, I know. They're losing it. See you, Christina. Good seeing you here. Take care. Oops, I just lost my spot. Damn, I freaking hate. Where was I? Oh, nope, not there. Have you tried? Some people have some of the proteins in egg white, which is usually the issue for most people. So if you get rid of the egg whites and just have the yolks, people seem to be okay with the yolks. So, yeah, try the yolks. Yeah, it's usually the egg whites. A few things about liver that people are talking about. It depends on the foods they're eating. If they're eating a lot of seafood and stuff like that, that's got a lot of salts. If sometimes what happens is a lot of these people have sort of like low levels of sort of like potassium is much lower. Their electrolytes are generally lower. So they have this sort of lower homeostasis. They sort of feel okay, but not really 100%. They don't know why. They don't feel any imbalances because they're in that lower threshold. And it seems to, oh yeah, whatever. So it's that more than anything. And then there are some people that tend to retain onto sodium. There are genetic reasons, tend to retain onto sodium much better. And so as a consequence, remember you're using to recycle uric acid and sodium, which the kidneys do. They use about 75% of their ATP energy production. So they use shitloads of their energy. So as a consequence, some people are more efficient in retaining and holding on. So they feel better when they don't use salt. So there are some genetic variations amongst people. So that's why I usually talk about people's ancestry very much. And it sort of gives me a bit of an idea. So, yeah. But if you're doing dairy and it's like milk, raw milk, you definitely need electrolytes to support it because raw milk is very high in potassium and very low in sodium. And that's why the Maasai use blood from their animals to get electrolytes, to get sodium and to balance out the potassium, the high potassium level in milk. The other dairy products like cheese and stuff like that tend to have a lot of added salt, it balances out the two things. So it depends on these sort of things, and it depends on some of your genetics, the way you respond, and all that. So you will know your body better than me or anyone else, and it's a matter of just experimenting a bit and seeing how you feel. If you for a prolonged period of time you've had, then you can go, okay, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to push my potassium and magnesium levels up. Then I'll add the salt to balance that out at a higher level and see how I feel. Do I feel more energized and better? If I do, then I'm a person that probably needs more salt to basically maintain that homeostasis and to support my general functioning. But then again, you may put that and feel like, oh, I really feel bad. Shit, it don't feel right. So you may be a person that retains too much sodium and naturally creates imbalances, and feel like, a headache coming on and all sorts of things and really just feel not right. So you've got to experiment a bit to work out where you are, what sort of person you are in a sense, in terms of these things. So it's not a one thing fits all. So a lot of people try to promote it like that, but they're wrong. Yeah, me too. And that's, if I don't put salt, it just, yeah. And I don't feel as optimal. So I tend to require more salt. And even in my genetics, if I look at my genetics, I have a propensity for salt. So it's in my genetics, you know. So that's another thing that I found out. And it doesn't surprise me because I've always had a liking for salt. Yep. I know my father did as well. He puts shitloads of salt on his food. And so there are genetics there. Exactly. My parents come from mountainous regions traditionally in Greece. And those mountainous regions, pretty much people use salt to preserve things. So their bodies are adapted to higher salt levels. So if I've got lower salt, I don't feel good. I really feel under par. So, and I probably excrete more of these, you know, I usually just get cream of tartar and some magnesium drops and put it in and sort of get myself back up to normal for a couple of days, 3 days it usually is, and then basically just up my salt and I go, well, fuck, I did that wrong, didn't I, for a few days? So I sort myself out pretty fast and I just keep my salt and I'm fine again. So, but yeah, there will be variations, and that's why I don't say as a blanket rule that everybody should do what Harry does or, what yourself does, so yeah. So but John, you come from sort of a background that it was very much off the coast. Fish was a very much an important component of your diet. You didn't have refrigeration, so salt was an important factor to maintain that food. I mean, you obviously had things that were raw and stuff like that, those part of the worlds, like we have in parts of Greece. But at the end of the day, salt was a very important component. It has been for most people, even for animals. You put out a salt block for animals to lick on, so it's usually people that can't manage salt properly is usually because they're waterlogged from high insulin. It's because of the inappropriate diets than anything else. G'day, mate. How's it going? I haven't seen Helmet Blister for a while. Come on, Necro Kitty. You're a Texan girl. You got big balls. Oops, I lost the spot. Fucking StreamYard. Am I that boring? Sorry. I'll do a comedy piece soon. Look, it doesn't have sort of enough in that regard. I mean, so, I mean, the MTHFR are very important. The choline metabolism is very important. A number of those genes are very important. That's where the key focus is. Some of the inflammatory ones, so I will be doing some stuff on that. I do recommend that people do get into, I mean, there's one that I did recently about the MTHFR, which is part one. I've still got another 2 parts to do. I just haven't put them together yet. And the other ones are going to be on choline and other stuff like that. But that one is on the genetic type that all these people that talk about MTHFR issues, and they put them on methylfolate, and they think they solve the problem. They don't. They induce a vitamin B12 deficiency in these people. Fantastic, isn't it? Wonderful. That's what naturopaths do for you. They induce it, and they create more causing, where all you need to do is to upregulate those genes that are involved in better getting folate and B12 to work better is riboflavin. Simple. So all it is you need more riboflavin than the other people when you've got the TT type in those alleles. Simple as that. And most animal products, what are they high in? Riboflavin. Raw milk, just 2 glasses will give you all your riboflavin for the whole day. It's simple. That's 500, half a litre basically will give you all your riboflavin, and pretty much just slightly over will give you all your B12 from raw milk, that is. So animal foods are very high in all sorts of nutrition. Milk is just poor in iron and manganese and a few other things. Is piss poor, so you need meat. You can't do it just a dairy-based diet. But generally speaking, and I did a video with Bart on that dairy issue, if you want to go and take a look at it, about the breakdown of exactly how much milk you need to consume in order to get all your micronutrients. So in terms of vitamins and minerals. So that may be interesting to some people that want to know how they can mix and match meat and dairy. So that video is in my playlist, one of the chats that I've had with Bart. So Bart K on his channel. So you can check that out if you want to get more information. And I will soon, I will do some sort of premiere. So this will not be like, it'll be a live stream. And this is next month. I'm still getting prepared for it. And one of my live streams, I haven't decided which one I'm going to do. It probably will be one of the Eurasian ones, the evening ones. And what it will be is it will be on certain genetics. So I will go through a number of genetics and talk about them and talk about the implications. And then you guys can ask me questions about these sort of things. So, and we will get into the more, not the esoteric ones, the more important ones. Because the esoteric ones are really not that important, It's really those important ones which have to do with methylation, those important ones which have to do with the general sort of functioning, your detox capacity, all these sort of things. And some of the people that may have lower detox capabilities, and if they want to extend their life, they need to basically consider other things that they can do. And we'll talk about this, and then you guys can ask questions. So because we're getting close to 3 hours, and my StreamYard, the amount of time that I'm allocated is 20 hours a month. And so I still need a couple of hours for next week's, which is the last week. And then I get reset on the 2nd. So I'm hoping that it's exactly on the 2nd, because I'm doing a live stream on the 2nd. If they do it they don't do it in the morning, but they do it later, I'm fucked. So I'm still a bit concerned, because if I get a few hours, even if it's a short one, because I'll be left with a better, So I'm trying to manage the time. You understand, it's when you try to use a free service, it's a bit hard to try and actually manage the time sometimes, so to speak. That just sounded gibberish. Anyway, Ian, good to see you, mate. Is talking ballsack. Is he now? Oh, he takes pride in being recognised as such. Oh, that's good. Isn't it nice? Show Hench the respect he deserves. Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. Yes, he's such a beautiful individual, human being. So caring, so loving, and so empathetic. If you're cute. If you're not cute, you're fucked. See, that's why I'm trying to become cute, so Paul will love me. No thanks. Yeah, it's disturbing, I know. I sounded disturbing there for a while, for a moment as well. Oh, God. Scary. Anyway, we are close to the end, so I'm really quickly looking. I used Ancestry Download for the whole database into Prometheus. Prometheus is fairly good. And okay, thanks, Harry. I hate eggs, but mix an egg yolk in with chili before. Yep. I eat K2. Make sure it's MK4 choline. Can't taste it. I'm not strict carnivore. Look, that's okay. I mean, we accept all sorts. You don't have to be strict carnivore. I mean, as long as you're keeping a lot of the anti-nutrient stuff off. I usually say, if you're having the least egregious type of plants you can have is like things like zucchini, a bit of carrot, a bit of sweet potato, a bit of pumpkin, things like that are probably, yes, they have some anti-nutrients, but not as horrendous as some of the, things like spinach and kale and stuff like that. They are horrendous to the body. So, yeah. So, I mean, in that regard, but try to keep away from some of the less than optimal stuff, or keep it down as much as possible, So you're welcome, mate. You're welcome. Yeah, do check it out. Bart came in on the early part of the stream, and he stayed for a while, and then he left because he had to take Pim to lunch. And then after that, Jared came in a bit later. He was trying to sort out some things. We made up a whole lot of rumors about that he was dealing with butter. So we gave him a bit of a hard time there. And we had some clips. Actually, let me just, I think I've got them here. The ones that, oops, where are they? Quickly. No, they're not there. Wrong folder. This folder. That's the one there. And where's the other one? Okay, let me just share the screen. These are Luke's things. That was this one was the first one. Answers to answers to the stream of questions. Yes. So that was one of Luke's. Yes, a heavy load. And this one was funny as well. Vegan deficiency supplements, the sticking to stop the water, and then it breaks right through. Their supplements are shit. So that was a funny thing. That was in the earlier one, and these were ones that Luke Garrida does. Our Brazilian friend, and there's the fetal thing that was in regards to the milk stuff that I was talking about, and a few other things, and deuterium and all that sort of stuff. That optimal. Yes. They are funny, those boys. Yes. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, mate. Good to see you here. You take care of yourself, and give those feathers a good shine, mate. Yeah, Luke's pretty good. He does a really good job of those sort of things. I mean, he's outstanding. I mean, I usually I'm pretty lucky in that regard. I get 2 and sometimes 3 on every one of my live streams. So I make sure that I now will post them. And next week, next fortnight, because the Eurasia one is every fortnight. Next fortnight, what I will do is I will cycle through the entire lot that he's done, because many of you guys may have not seen them all. So I will cycle through them all so you guys can get a few laughs and all that. And, so yes, we can all enjoy them. Looks, guys, we're way over 3 hours, and I need to conserve the hours for next week. Because I'm not sure the week after whether I'm going to be, when the reset's going to actually happens, and that's going to be an issue, because I may not be able to immediately, put up on that week. So I'll have to basically try in the morning. So you may not see like an advertised live stream for the 2nd of next month, and the reason for that is because StreamYard won't allow me to post, because I won't have the reset won't have happened yet. And so just keep that in mind, that if you don't see it, is because I'm going to give it a try and see whether it works. They may allow me, even with a small amount of time, like a few minutes or whatever, they may allow me. But if you don't see it up, it will happen in the morning for those who are within the Australasian area. It will happen. It'll just the notification will come up late. It'll be come up, sometime early in the morning, and that's when I'll have to post it the moment I get up, because it will be one of those. It's just the way the month has actually come, and the reset time, it usually doesn't right at the beginning. And so this week, the next month, is really one of those funny type reset months, and it falls exactly on the day that I do the live stream. So yeah, that potentially could be an issue for me. So we'll play it by ear. We'll see how it all pans out for those who come in on the early stream, the following. So because that'll also affect the Eurasian, because that will be happening the same, the first. So there's 2 streams, and they will end up being advertised later as a consequence. So I'm going to give it a try and see whether they will put them up. Yeah, we're going to have to play it by ear. Sorry, guys. It's just the way it is with these things. Yes. Anyway, thanks, everyone. I'll just cycle through all these things. Thanks for everyone who's turned up. Appreciate it. Take care, all of yous. Play it safe. And if anything is really ailing you and you're struggling to sort it out, just drop me an email. Yes, it may take a couple of days before a reply, but drop me an email. Say, really, I've been trying. I'm struggling with this thing. Any ideas? I don't mind. I'd rather you guys just be able to reset and get back to living normal. That's the key thing. Don't let it, sort of, oh yeah. Don't neglect it is what I'm trying to say. So thanks. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone. And see you early next week, some of you, and the rest of you in 2 weeks' time. Anyway, see you. Good night, guys, or good day, wherever you are. Take care.